Really? You missed a season and a half of Shameless? What could be more important than watching our show? Okay, whatever, here it is. Fiona decides she's done with meaningless sex and she's looking for a real connection with someone. Good for her. Everyone else is busy dealing the meth they took from Monica's storage unit. Carl sells his for a hot tub, Debbie sells hers for welding gear, Lip sells his to pay back Ewan's for the rehab, and Frank smokes all of his in a Buddhist monastery. He loses some teeth and decides he needs to apologize to everyone. He's wronged. That is a lot of people. Svetlana's turned the alibi into a Russian hangout she calls Putin's paradise, and V plots ways to kill her, resulting with V getting ice to raid the Russians. Frank enters his spiritual 20s and goes out to interview for a real job at a garden supply store. He tells the manager that the death of his wife was his rebirth and he'll never let a woman change who he is again, and Frank gets the job. Frank even starts his first real bank account with a Lifesaver Mint as collateral. Ian gets sentimental over the rest of Monica's meth and he cries about her. Frank gets promoted to garden department supervisor. Carl and Ian get chased out of Monica's storage unit by a drug-dealing meth head who says they stole all his meth. Frank announces that he's now going by the name Francis and is going to be the living image of St. Francis, which I think is just great for him. Ewans, while drunk, drives his car through a woman's living room and Lip takes care of him and tries to get him sober. But Ewans is terrified to going to prison. He doesn't care about getting sober. V and Kev help release Svetlana from prison so she can come back and help him run the bar. The drug dealer finds the Gallagher house and shit goes down and leads everyone to say, "You were right and I was wrong, Fiona." Also, Frank says that he's discovered guilt. So there's that. Fiona takes the family to the graveyard and they want to dig up Monica's grave to get the meth that she left in the casket. Carl steals a forklift to speed up the process and he ends up dropping Monica's casket and she falls out of it and everyone throws up. The Gallaghers return to Monica's storage unit to confront the drug dealer. St. Francis does all the talking and the family walks away with a clean slate. Frank announces that he's reached his symbolic 30s in the age of his spiritual enlightenment, and Lip feels like he's gone back to puberty because he's so horny all the time. Frank decides he's going to parent improperly, and he joins the PTA. All the moms at the school fall in love with him when he takes off his shirt during a car wash. Lip fails at getting a hookup from Tinder, and his co-worker, Eddie, has sex with him to make him stop complaining about how horny he is all the time. Brad has a baby, and Carl catches a burglar who turns out to be an addict, so Carl holds him hostage in the basement to detox him. Frank reaches his spiritual 40s, and he tells the family men in their 40s soar in their career, and he's promoted to assistant manager at the garden shop. Everything's coming up Francis, but nobody cares. Carl's Native American scholarship is going to go to another student, and he needs $12,000 fast. The junkie from the basement tells him he could make money detoxing people because he does a better job than the rehab. Ian and Trevor hook up. V and Svetlana hook up. Frank fucks one of the PTA moms in his store. Svetlana and V hook up again, and V ends up giving Svetlana 50% control to the bar. Fiona finds one of the tenants dead in her apartment with the tenant's dog eating it. Fiona decides to keep the dead tenant's dog. Lip takes Ewan on the road to find Brad, who's lost on a bender, and he finds out that he's stolen the arm of Chicago's beloved Michael Jordan statue. That's bad. Frank gets his first non-fraudulent credit card and announces that he's entered the middle class. Then he discovers online shopping and he buys a car online. And he's riding high until he finds out that the store's being sold and he's going to get laid off. Ian is still pissed at Fiona about the church, and he wakes her up every day by pouring a bucket of ice water on her. Carl is running a full detox program in the basement. Ian gets access to a plot of land just outside of Fiona's building and has homeless kids from Trevor's shelter build a tent camp there. Lip makes a touching speech for Ewans in court, but Ewans came to court drunk, so that guy's going to jail. Fiona bribes the homeless kids to leave her property, and Ian is furious. Fiona finds a new building for the kids to live in, and Trevor signs a lease for it. Now Ian is mad at everyone. Frank laments the white man's struggle and decides to start a smuggling business, smuggling people to Canada and pharmaceuticals from Canada. Carl starts dating Cassidy, the junkie from the basement. Frank's first trip to Canada was a complete success, and he realizes he's finally found a family business that uses his God-given talents. Debbie thinks she's pregnant, so Lip takes her to the clinic where he sees his ex-Sierra's current boyfriend, Charlie, with another woman, another pregnant woman. Fiona spends a day with her Irish handyman, Ford, and by the end of the day, she tries to make out with him, but he tells her she's too complicated for him. Ian has a Bible quote off with a priest at a gay conversion church, and he rescues a bunch of kids from their shitty families. Someone in the church films Ian's confrontation and puts it online. He goes viral. Then Fiona finds out that Ford has gotten a bunch of lesbian couples pregnant, and he has a ton of kids. Now who's complicated? The Canadian police bust Frank. That was bound to happen. He gets handcuffed to one of his refugees, and as they're being driven to jail, the Mounties hit a moose with their car, and they die. Trevor sleeps with Ian. Lip is sleeping with Eddie. and Carl is sleeping with Cassidy. Basically, everyone is boning, but Fiona. Debbie needs money for a welding class, and she finds out the dog she's watching is a drug dog. So she starts finding and selling drugs, the American way. Up north, Frank is still trying to get back over the border to America. He ends up punching a little girl in the face and stealing her horse. He eventually finds his way back to our good old automated America. Charlie's baby mama has her baby. Sierra finds out and goes running to Lip when he's about to make sweet love to Eddie. Eddie says she doesn't care. Trust me, she does. Charlie asks Lip to talk to Sierra on his behalf, and Lip goes to do it. But him and Sierra end up hooking up. Whoops. Ian starts preaching at a youth group and becomes a leader against the gay conversion congregations. Ford and Fiona finally kiss, and Carl buys a promise ring to show Cassidy he's serious about their relationship, but she thinks it's an engagement ring, and now they're engaged. Yep. Ian has groupies who think he performs miracles. Cassidy calls him Hot Gay Jesus, and Frank immediately invests in the Church of Gay Jesus merchandise. Fiona finds out that a roofer fell off her roof, and he's homeless, and she lets the family stay in her apartment. Cassidy tells Carl he has to marry her before he leaves, and he tells her he wants to wait, and so she pretends to hang herself to make Carl go through with it. And they get married with fake IDs. That's my boy. Debbie does sketchy non-union welding jobs for tons of money, and a huge pipe ends up falling on her foot. Fiona and Ford go out on a date and end up sleeping together, which is great. But then she finds out that the injured roofer is suing her for $6 million, which is bad. Lip learns that Ewan's died in prison and prepares to make a speech at Ewan's funeral. Sierra's dad is released from prison, and her son come to stay with Lip. We really should call our show Full House. Anyway, Lip goes to find Sierra's dad at a halfway house and gets into a fight with him, while Eddie's niece Zan films it, and Sierra's dad is sent back to prison. That's cold, hard Gallagher justice. Frank starts more seriously planning his retirement. So when Liam's wealthy friend Dylan invites him to go yachting, and Frank sees all the expensive crap the family has, he starts to come up with a new retirement plan. Debbie finds out that she might lose 3 of her toes since she can't pay for the surgery. So she asks Liam to cut the toes off for her, but he passes out in the process. So she tries to do it herself, and then she passes out. Frank finds them both passed out, and he cuts off the toes himself. It smells like steak. Fiona finally goes, and he gets a crowd to come together and stop a man from kidnapping his son to take him to a conversion camp. But the boy's father comes to Ian and says he doesn't want to take his son to a conversion camp. He just wants to get his son help because his son is mentally ill. Ian isn't sure who to believe, but he ends up blowing up the guy's van. In season 8 finale, Sierra tells Lip that she loves him. That's a huge deal, but Lip is still trying to figure out who he is when he's sober, so he tells her they can't be together. Carl tells Cassidy that he loves her, but he has to go back to military school the next day, so she handcuffs him to the bed so he can't leave. Frank tells Liam that his friend Dylan's dad is a white-collar criminal, a thief, and asks Liam to give him the code to the house so they can rip him off. But Liam purposefully gives Frank the wrong code, and Frank has to hide from the cops inside a porta potty in the toilet. It's very blue. Fiona tries to figure out what to do about the roofer's family, and Frank tells her he should get his pal, Pyro Pauly, to burn down the apartment building with them in it. Fiona goes to Pyro Pauly, and he helps her make a smoke bomb to smoke the roofers out of the apartment, and Fiona cuts a deal with them, and they get the hell out of there. Trevor tells Fiona there's a warrant out for Ian's arrest after he blew up the van, but no one can find him anywhere. Giant "God is gay and he loves you" sign, and tons of reporters and cops show up. And the crowd tells the cops that they're all Ian Gallagher, and they all get arrested. It's really cool. Lip finds out that Eddie left her niece Zan at the Office of Social Services to come get her, so he tells him she can come stay with him for a few days. Carl boards a bus to military school with Cassidy chasing close behind. And on to season 9. Fiona is running around town to get Ian's bail money, and she finds out that Ford has 2 phones. He says one of them is for his mom, but she's not so sure. Cassidy sets up camp at Carl's school to stalk him, and Carl interviews to be a cadet lieutenant, but his commanding officer tells him he needs to get a couple of things in check first. One is linked to murder Cassidy. Whoa! Frank gets called into an emergency meeting after strains of every venereal disease known to man are found in the PTA. And it turns out everyone's been having sex with everyone. They all have to get 12 hours of IVs, and Frank tries to mediate all the couples. They thank him, but he still gets kicked in the dick at the end, so that's the way it goes. Ford tells Fiona that Ian is violent and has a Jesus complex, and she shouldn't bail him out. And most of the Gallaghers agree. She gets the money to bail him out anyway, but decides not to do it when she sees how totally nuts he is. Fiona uses the money on commercial real estate, which Ford thinks is a bad idea. The PTA at Liam's school is still mad at Frank over spreading so many venereal diseases, and Liam loses his scholarship. Carl finds out that he needs to get a recommendation from a congressman, do volunteer work, and get good grades to get into West Point. He starts to volunteer at a dog euthanasia facility, but he can't bring himself to put any of the dogs to sleep, so he brings them home and they all die naturally in the basement. Ian gets bailed out by the kids from Trevor's youth shelter. While he can't take the pressure, so he runs away again. Frank finds out that there's a lot of money in politics, but these days people want diversity. This doesn't sit well with Frank, who said that no one represents the white man anymore. So he gets an old retired white politician named Mo White to run for office. Debbie finally finds another female welder named Alex, and the two of them band together to address the issue of equal pay among welders. The Alibi Room gets ranked the #1 rapiest bar on the South Side, and Kevin is upset, so he makes a lot of changes to the bar. And he gives Kermit and Tommy lessons about respecting women. Carl's community service is going well, but he also needs a recommendation from a congressman to be accepted to West Point. He finds out that V used to be a dominatrix for their congressman, and he guilt trips her into getting the old whips and chains back out to get his recommendation, and it works. Frank starts to campaign for Mo White and finds out that Mo is a sex offender who used to date a 15-year-old girl. Yikes. Debbie tries to figure out if she's gay after she starts falling for Alex. She asks Ian if he thinks she's gay, and he says no, she's straight. And she tells him that he's a bipolar Gallagher who doesn't take his meds, not gay Jesus. Ouch. But turns out he was right, because Alex starts avoiding Debbie because he doesn't feel that Debbie's gay, and she says she can't fall in love with another straight girl. Zan breaks her arm, and when Lip goes to pick her up from the hospital, he finds out that Child Services is coming together. He cuts off a guy's respirator to cause a distraction to get her out of there. And I think the guy died. Kevin makes a giant certified vagina safe sign to put over the front door. It's fantastic. The Alibi Room gets pulled off the rapiest bar list, and it gets called the most female-friendly bar on the South Side. Frank is busy trying to keep Mo White away from Chuck E. Cheese and keep him focused on the campaign. Zan's mom comes together, but Lip finds out that she's a junkie prostitute, and he doesn't want to give Zan back to her. He asks Zan if she would want to stay with him, and she says yes. Frank hires a bunch of skinheads to stand outside the polling place to scare people away from voting for anyone but Mo. But Ian's church sends its people over, and there's a big fight, a fabulous brawl. Everybody gets punched in the face a few times. It's really fun. Lip meets up with Zan's mom to offer her 10 grand to sign the papers making him Zan's legal guardian. But Zan follows him, thinks her mom's come to pick her up. So Lip gives them the money and leaves Zan with her mom. It's so sad. Ian tries to decide what option he should take for his trial: a plea bargain, a full trial, or pleading insanity from being off his meds. Fiona tells him he better plead insanity, but Ian's church says that would discredit all the work they've been doing so far, so Ian runs away. Again, Frank's body is rejecting his liver, so he has to go on some new meds, but he can only afford the generic ones, and they have terrible side effects. But Frank only cares about the one called erectile dysfunction. He has Liam do electroshock therapy on his dick, and he ends up frying it. V tells him he has to choose between his penis and his liver. That's a tough call. Then Frank meets a crazy woman in the hospital named Ingrid, who makes him hard again. This really is a family show. Ian returns home, and the whole family takes him to his trial, and he pleads not guilty by reason of insanity. Thank you, gay Jesus. Fiona gets wasted and uses Find My Phone to find Ford. She goes to the address the app says he's at, and she finds out that he's married and he has a kid. She loses a drive into prison. They all cry and have a beautiful group hug. It's very sad. After the send-off, Ian finds out his new cellmate will be, wait for it, Mickey Milkovich. Frank has moved into Ingrid's house, and it turns out she's a psychotherapist. She shaves him from head to toe and calls him her mouse boy. Debbie finds Fiona and sees that she's a complete mess after a car accident. With a very heavy heart, Fiona lists her building, and the real estate agent tells her he'll buy it so that she can break even and walk away with her credit intact. Fiona goes on a much-needed bender and returns home, waking everyone up for her manic welcome home party. Debbie and her welding friends take her out for a big surprise. They built these giant stocks, and they put Ford into it with his pants down, and a big sign that says, "This man is an asshole." And Fiona shoots him in the ass with a paintball gun. Now that we're all caught up, why don't you make sure that you watch the fucking show, because this is exhausting.